It's not every day that a Cleveland sports show gets called out by someone from St. Louis. But that's exactly what happened, and it didn't go the way anyone expected. Because this wasn't a troll call. This wasn't yelling. This wasn't some angry fan defending his favorite quarterback. It was calm. It was precise. And it landed right on a nerve Cleveland media didn't want touched. The topic on the surface was simple: Shedeur Sanders and the Pro Bowl. But within seconds, the conversation drifted somewhere far more uncomfortable, into how Cleveland media treats quarterbacks when the spotlight gets too bright. The caller didn't attack. He compared. And that comparison instantly changed the temperature in the room. What made this moment hit harder was who it came from. Not a Browns homer. Not a Dayan superfan. But an outsider with no reason to protect Shedeur or Cleveland. That's when the energy shifted. Because suddenly, the hosts weren't debating football anymore. They were defending themselves. Past comments resurfaced. Laughs from earlier segments didn't age well. And explanations started sounding a lot like rewrites. What followed wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. But it was worse. It was a slow unraveling live on air. Listeners noticed the change in tone. Fans caught the contradictions. And one phone call quietly turned a routine sports segment into a credibility problem. This wasn't about whether Shedeur deserved a Pro Bowl nod. It was about something Cleveland media rarely likes discussing. Who gets patience? Who gets labeled early? And who the blame really falls on when quarterbacks don't meet expectations fast enough. And once that door opened, there was no easy way to close it. It's not every day that a Cleveland sports show gets absolutely shut down live on air. But that's exactly what happened, and it all started with a simple phone call from a fan from St. Louis. Not a Browns fan, not a local radio caller, someone with zero allegiance, zero reason to defend Shedeur Sanders. Yet within seconds, the air in the studio changed. The topic was straightforward: Shedeur Sanders making the Pro Bowl. On paper, a big accomplishment for a developmental quarterback with just 7 touchdowns and 10 picks in his rookie season. On Cleveland radio, however, it had been treated like a punchline. Hosts had openly mocked the selection, comparing it unfavorably to Tyler Huntley and questioning whether Sanders even deserved a starting role. Laughter filled the studio. The audience was in on the joke, but then came the call. The St. Louis fan didn't yell. He didn't argue, he observed, and the observations hit like precision strikes. He compared Cleveland media to the Cardinals' coverage in St. Louis, a city that sticks with its players even through rough seasons. "I've never seen a media tear down its own people like you guys do," he said calmly. That line alone made the hosts pause because it wasn't just criticism. It was truth from someone outside the system, someone with no dog in the fight. Then he started naming names. The big guy in the corner, the host in the white shirt. Suddenly, the joke of mocking Sanders' Pro Bowl became a mirror reflecting the media's own agenda. "You're tearing down your own quarterback," the caller said. "Baker Mayfield, Johnny Manziel, now Shedeur Sanders. It's a pattern. Stop pretending this is accountability." And that's when the hosts shifted. Deflection. Backtracking. "We're holding people accountable," they claimed, but the words fell flat. Every prior laugh, every sarcastic comment, every on-air joke now looked like a lie. Listeners could hear it, the tone changed, hesitation crept in, and the illusion of fairness shattered. In less than 3 minutes, a single outsider's perspective exposed what fans inside Cleveland had long felt: a toxic pattern and agenda disguised as analysis, and a quarterback unfairly scrutinized by the very city he represents. That call didn't just rattle the hosts, it stopped the show cold, and left viewers and listeners questioning everything they had been told about Sanders' Pro Bowl nod. And that was just the beginning. When Shedeur Sanders' Pro Bowl selection was announced, Cleveland media didn't just report it, they mocked it. On-air, hosts openly compared Sanders to Tyler Huntley, framing the rookie quarterback's achievement as some kind of embarrassment. "That's worse than Tyler Huntley," one host said. "I mean, with all due respect to Sanders," followed by laughter. It was subtle in tone but blatant in message. Sanders wasn't a player to be celebrated, he was a joke, a punchline for ratings. And viewers noticed. That reaction didn't just land badly with fans, it invited scrutiny from outside the city. Jonathan Liquid, a prominent voice analyzing media hypocrisy, immediately called out the Cleveland narrative. He highlighted the stark contrast between how the media portrayed Sanders and the reality of the situation. Yes, Sanders was a developmental quarterback, but making the Pro Bowl as a rookie wasn't unprecedented. He wasn't the first underdog to get there. Legends like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning also started as alternates. Yet Cleveland media acted as if this was some scandalous misstep, a failure to uphold the city's football legacy. The irony only grew when the hosts tried to backtrack the next day. Suddenly, the same voices that mocked Sanders' selection were claiming, "We have been extremely fair, extremely pro-Sanders, no agenda here." Jonathan Liquid's response, text on screen, "You a damn lie," because that's exactly what it was. Mocking a player one day and claiming fairness the next isn't accountability. It's gaslighting, rewriting history for convenience. And then came the phone call from St. Louis. The fan systematically exposed the contradictions in real time. He pointed out the pattern Cleveland media has followed for years, tearing down their own quarterbacks, from Baker Mayfield to Johnny Manziel, now continuing with Sanders. He highlighted the absurdity of claiming support while constantly criticizing, the hypocrisy of presenting jokes as analysis. Every excuse the host tried, "We hold people accountable," crumbled under the fans' logic. By the end of the segment, what was meant to be a routine Pro Bowl discussion had turned into a reckoning. Viewers weren't just watching media spin, they were watching a narrative collapse live as a fan's voice punctured years of toxic coverage. Sanders' achievement stood on its own merit, while the Cleveland media's credibility took a hit that no backtrack or explanation could fully repair. In one sweeping moment, the city's commentators were exposed not as arbiters of truth, but as participants in a pattern of dismissal and disrespect, proving once and for all why Shedeur Sanders' Pro Bowl selection sparked more controversy off the field than on it. Then came the moment Cleveland media didn't see coming, a phone call from St. Louis that completely flipped the script. This wasn't a casual fan ranting, it was a measured, sharp, and blistering critique of Cleveland's media culture. Right off the bat, the caller made it clear, "I just don't understand all the hate that this guy gets. Cleveland should embrace Shedeur Sanders, he's good for the community." From the first sentence, he set the tone. This wasn't just about football, it was about toxic coverage and a city tearing down its own players. The caller didn't hold back. He compared Cleveland to St. Louis, highlighting a striking contrast. "I'm from St. Louis, the greatest baseball city," he said. "Even in bad seasons, our media never tears down our own." That one line landed hard, coming from someone outside the Cleveland bubble. It exposed the pattern of destruction that local media had normalized, and he didn't stop there. He called out individual hosts, accusing them of being the biggest haters in the room, people whose support was just a mask for constant criticism. Every argument Cleveland hosts tried to make, the "we hold people accountable" excuse, the claim of fairness, was systematically dismantled. The caller pointed to concrete examples, offensive lines that failed, receivers benched, chemistry disrupted, yet Sanders still made the Pro Bowl. He forced the hosts to confront what the audience already knew. Their coverage wasn't accountability, it was agenda-driven criticism. Jonathan Liquid, covering the segment live, highlighted just how devastating this call was. Normally, radio shows cut off critical callers or go to commercial. This time they had to let it air because it was undeniable. Every point the St. Louis fan made, the hypocrisy, the backtracking, the pattern of tearing down quarterbacks like Baker Mayfield and Johnny Manziel, was on display for all to see. It was a masterclass in calling out media double standards. By the end of the call, Sanders wasn't just vindicated in the eyes of fans. The Cleveland media's credibility was on full display for failure. What was intended as criticism became a public lesson. You can't hide behind claims of fairness when your actions scream bias. And for Sanders, this moment wasn't just about surviving media scrutiny. It was a wake-up call for anyone in the league paying attention. Some narratives can be exposed, but talent and resilience always speak louder. Despite the media storm, Shedeur Sanders kept doing what he does best, playing football under impossible circumstances. It wasn't just about talent, it was about resilience under pressure. The offensive line was inconsistent at best, key receivers were benched or shuffled around, and yet Sanders still delivered moments that made fans stand up and take notice. 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Those numbers tell part of the story, but what the stat sheet doesn't show is how often he was forced to improvise, make split-second decisions, and carry a team under a microscope that seemed eager to criticize. What makes this so compelling is the contrast. Cleveland media could dissect every mistake, mock every highlight, and question every decision. Meanwhile, fans watching could see the context they ignored, the pressure from a front office experimenting, the offensive line struggling, and the rookie still learning the ropes. Sanders didn't just survive the chaos, he thrived enough to make the Pro Bowl, a feat that would have been impossible without poise, skill, and mental toughness. Some reports suggest that the Pro Bowl selection itself became a lightning rod for more criticism. A rookie barely experienced making such an honor, that's worse than Tyler Huntley, some hosts claimed. But Sanders didn't argue, didn't respond publicly, he let performance speak louder than words. And it worked. Fans and analysts outside Cleveland started noticing the disconnect between media narratives and reality. Social media exploded with support, replaying highlights that the local media had dismissed. This wasn't just about a game or a season. It was about navigating a minefield of skepticism and bias while still proving yourself on the field. Sanders' ability to stay composed under fire, handle criticism without getting derailed, and still make historic achievements shows why he's more than just a headline. He's a future cornerstone quarterback, tested in both talent and character. And while the Cleveland media tried to rewrite the narrative, claiming accountability, fairness, or holding him to a standard, the truth was clear. Sanders' skill and determination could not be overshadowed. The Pro Bowl wasn't a fluke, it was validation. And every hater, every doubter, every critic who tried to tear him down had to face the reality of his performance amidst chaos. The lesson: you can challenge the system, endure the scrutiny, and still come out shining. And that's exactly what Shedeur Sanders did. Shedeur Sanders isn't the first quarterback to feel the sting of Cleveland media, he's just the latest in a long line. From Baker Mayfield to Johnny Manziel, the city has a history of tearing down its own signal callers. Every misstep, every interception, every imperfect game becomes a story of failure rather than context. And Sanders, he stepped into the same environment, rookie eyes wide open, only to discover the pattern hadn't changed. The problem isn't just critique, it's agenda-driven criticism. Analysts claim fairness, but actions tell another story. Sanders' Pro Bowl selection? Mocked. His achievements? Downplayed. His mistakes? Amplified. And when fans called out this hypocrisy, the same voices that ridiculed him tried to backtrack, pretending they'd been fair all along. But the receipts don't lie. Clips, tweets, and on-air moments exposed the pattern. Cleveland media doesn't just analyze, it narrates the story it wants, and often that story casts the city's own quarterback as a target. What makes this even more frustrating is the inconsistency. Sanders performs in spite of a chaotic offensive line, shuffled receivers, and limited support, yet coverage frames him as underperforming. Meanwhile, fans outside the city notice the disconnect immediately. They see a rookie achieving milestones under pressure. They see a player making history as a fifth-round rookie Pro Bowler. They see a young quarterback who deserves credit, not mockery. Jonathan Liquid, a well-known voice in sports commentary, pointed this out clearly. Cleveland's media isn't just critical, it's toxic by pattern. The same hosts who claim to love Sanders can't resist questioning whether he should even start. They position themselves as accountable, but accountability doesn't mean tearing down a player with an agenda. True accountability weighs context, conditions, and effort, yet that perspective is often lost. This isn't personal, it's systemic. Cleveland media has created a culture of skepticism. One where fans and outsiders alike struggle to reconcile the narrative with reality. It's a city proud of its sports, yet its own coverage seems designed to build doubt instead of support. And Sanders, as a young quarterback, is caught in the crossfire, forced to prove himself not just on the field but against pervasive narrative bias. The pattern is clear: mock the rookie, minimize his achievements, deflect responsibility, and repeat. But fans are noticing, receipts are circulating, and the narrative is being challenged. Cleveland media might try to claim accountability, but the broader story is now undeniable. Sanders' talent and resilience outshine the criticism, no matter how persistent or biased. Then came the moment that shook Cleveland media to its core. A caller from St. Louis picked up the line and didn't hold back. And this wasn't just a casual fan, this was someone who looked at the situation with clarity, unfiltered by local bias. From the first words it was clear. The Cleveland coverage of Shedeur Sanders wasn't just unfair, it was toxic. The caller opened calmly but firmly, saying, "I just don't understand all the hate this guy gets. Cleveland should embrace him. He's good for the community, but you guys, you nitpick everything." Coming from St. Louis, a city with its own proud sports tradition, the criticism stung. "I've never seen a media tear down its own people like you guys do," the caller added. That line hit hard because it contrasted Cleveland's relentless negativity with St. Louis' supportive approach, even during losing seasons. Suddenly, what had seemed like routine commentary became a mirror reflecting a pattern of bias and agenda-driven coverage. The host tried to deflect, asking about the baseball team in St. Louis, a classic distraction tactic. But the caller wasn't fazed. Every attempt to redirect the conversation was met with sharp, pointed observations about how Cleveland media targets its own quarterbacks while claiming fairness. He cited Kevin Stefanski benching receivers who had chemistry with Sanders, the poor protection from the offensive line, and yet Sanders still made the Pro Bowl. "He punished you if you showed him love," the caller said, cutting to the core of the issue. The exchanges escalated quickly. Specific hosts were called out for being the biggest hater in the room. Excuses like holding players accountable fell flat under scrutiny. The caller dismantled every talking point. Accountability doesn't mean mocking accomplishments or rewriting history. And the best part? Cleveland media had no defense. Every attempt to spin the narrative was exposed in real time. Jonathan Liquid, watching the call unfold, confirmed what everyone feared. Cleveland media had an agenda. Sanders wasn't just being critiqued, he was being systematically undermined. The call highlighted hypocrisy, double standards, and the toxic cycle that had previously destroyed Baker Mayfield and Johnny Manziel. Fans nationwide started noticing. The story wasn't about Sanders' mistakes, It was about a media system that often prefers criticism over celebration. By the time the call ended, Cleveland media was left reeling. Their credibility was questioned, their narrative dismantled, and Sanders' resilience spotlighted. The St. Louis caller didn't just call in, he exposed the culture, forcing the conversation to shift. The lesson was clear: talent and perseverance cannot be erased, no matter how aggressive the local media might be. After the St. Louis caller dropped that bombshell, the fallout was immediate. Cleveland media was forced into damage control, scrambling to defend their credibility. Every host, producer, and analyst who had mocked Shedeur Sanders now faced public scrutiny. Their attempts to claim fairness rang hollow because the receipts were out there, clear evidence of the mockery and gaslighting. Social media exploded, clips of the call went viral, and fans everywhere began questioning the pattern of local coverage. Sanders had become a symbol of resilience, not just on the field, but against the media storm surrounding him. Meanwhile, Sanders himself stayed remarkably composed. Unlike the pundits trying to spin stories or defend past missteps, he didn't add fuel to the fire. Instead, his actions on the field continued to speak louder than any commentary. 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and still a Pro Bowl selection, numbers that, while not flawless, proved he was performing under terrible circumstances: benchings, missing receivers, and a struggling offensive line. Analysts who once ridiculed him now had to acknowledge the impossible conditions he overcame. Sanders' response wasn't flashy or defensive, it was quiet dominance, letting his achievements expose the media's hypocrisy naturally. Fans took notice. Across forums, comment sections, and social media, the conversation shifted. The narrative changed from Sanders as the developmental quarterback with flaws to Sanders as a target of unfair coverage. Cleveland's media had underestimated the power of transparency, the influence of an outside perspective, and the patience of a fanbase unwilling to watch Sanders get dismantled publicly. By the time pundits tried to backtrack, it was too late. The pattern had been called out, documented, and shared. Jonathan Liquid's commentary amplified the impact. He highlighted that Cleveland media's history wasn't a one-off. It was a recurring cycle of tearing down quarterbacks like Baker Mayfield and Johnny Manziel. Sanders was now the latest figure in a troubling trend. And yet, unlike those before him, Sanders had a Pro Bowl to prove his worth, making the criticism not only unfair but easily disproven by results. The lesson from this aftermath was clear: media narratives can't override on-field performance indefinitely. Sanders had shown that resilience, professionalism, and a focus on growth could withstand scrutiny, even when local outlets attempted to rewrite the story. Fans realized it, Sanders proved it, and Cleveland media was left questioning how they had been exposed in real time. The saga wasn't over, but Sanders had firmly reclaimed the narrative, showing that talent and perseverance can survive even the harshest media environment. This moment with the St. Louis caller wasn't just a fan rant, it was a mirror held up to Cleveland media. For years, the narrative around quarterbacks in that city has followed a pattern: draft high-profile talent, celebrate briefly, then systematically tear them down. Baker Mayfield, questioned at every turn; Johnny Manziel, criticized relentlessly. Now Shedeur Sanders joins that list, despite his impressive rookie achievements and Pro Bowl selection. What the call exposed is that this isn't about accountability, it's about control. Media outlets want to dictate the story, deciding who succeeds, who fails, and who deserves praise. And when reality doesn't fit that narrative, they scramble to backtrack, rewrite history, or gaslight the audience. But Sanders' situation highlights a broader truth: fans are no longer passive. With social media, instant clips, and viral moments, the audience can fact-check, challenge, and call out hypocrisy in real time. The St. Louis caller didn't just criticize, he documented it, framed it, and shared it publicly, making it impossible for the Cleveland media to ignore or spin away. This is the power shift that every young quarterback, every controversial player now has to navigate. Talent alone isn't enough. They must manage perception, social media narratives, and sometimes outright hostility from the local press. Sanders is navigating all of this while being one of the youngest Pro Bowl quarterbacks in recent memory, and he's doing it with quiet professionalism. What's striking is the pattern of plausible deniability. Cleveland media claims they are critical but fair, yet the evidence shows otherwise. The hypocrisy isn't subtle, it's public. And Sanders' performance under such scrutiny makes the criticism almost irrelevant on the field. 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and still rising to the Pro Bowl, that's a statement in itself. It proves that results ultimately speak louder than commentary, especially when that commentary is motivated by preconceived agendas or past biases. Finally, this moment revealed a cultural lesson. A player's environment matters, but so does how the narrative is managed. Sanders' resilience, combined with fan advocacy and outside scrutiny, shifted the story from one of mockery to one of respect and earned recognition. Cleveland media was forced to confront its own failures, and the audience saw clearly how bias, favoritism, and agenda-driven reporting can distort perception. For Sanders, it's a reminder: the spotlight isn't always fair, but professionalism, performance, and patience can reclaim the narrative. In the end, this isn't just about one player or one call. It's about how media, fans, and players interact in modern sports culture and how accountability works in real time. The story of Shedeur Sanders isn't over, but one thing is clear: resilience beats hypocrisy and talent shines through, even in the harshest spotlight.